Hello, friends. Welcome back to C Club's podcast. I'm your host, Jess, and today we're talking all things Accelerator. SC04 has just kicked off, and I'm joined by a panel of folks who were deeply involved in the creation, the selection, and ultimately the execution of our fourth cohort. We get into some of the differences between previous cohorts and how we're approaching SC04. We talk about the steps, process, the way that we actually got to choosing the 21 projects that ultimately got into SC04. There were over 210. It was quite the process. And we got into a bit of an overview over some of the things that upcoming cohort participants should expect, as well as some of the hopes and dreams Nicole has for SC04. And of course, we share how you can follow along, stay up to date, and maybe even participate in this process. The Accelerator is the core of what we do here at C Club. It's how we bring brilliant people together, along with a wonderful network of supporters to help launch novel, interesting, and hopefully world-impacting DAOs and community tokens. And this should give you a bit of a window into how we're thinking about building it and growing it. So let's get into it. Absolutely no better way to start a podcast than just hitting record. Very excited to have you all here today to talk about, I guess it's an announcement that's just gone out literally a couple hours ago, and we're already deep in it, but we're talking about C Club's fourth cohort. So, joined here by Nicole, Josh, and Jeff, three members of our Accelerator working group / past participants / I think that's like the name of the game with C Club is once you get in, you can never leave. There's a quote there. I'm really not having a good analogy or quote day, but that's okay. Thank you for not holding me accountable to that. But yes, today we want to just jump in and share a little bit of, about C Club and about the Accelerator, about some lessons, and perhaps more importantly, about how you can participate, join in, follow along, feel more a part of this exciting world that is sort of evolving in front of all of us in real time. So maybe to start, Nicole, you live and breathe the Accelerator. You are our fearless leader in everything Accelerator related. Let's just start off with like a high level. If there's folks who are just tuning in today with us for the first time, what is C Club's Accelerator and why is it so cool?
It is so cool. Yeah, so thanks for having us. One of my favorite topics, Accelerator. A few times a year, we come together to learn and build together. I think that we at C Club have this really unique opportunity to pull together all of these amazing builders and thought shapers that are within the C Club ecosystem. We get to bring them together and then share those learnings with projects. So I think that it helps you advance your mindset and understanding of how you're going to build your community. We do this in a lot of ways, but one of the core ways is bringing projects together in cohorts. So this is SC04. I came through SC02 with Jeff, which was happening this time last year. The cohorts are 6 to 8 weeks, growing numbers of projects. I think we were a cohort of 12. SC03 was 15 to 16, and we're now up to 21 projects, 210 plus applications for these slots. But the heart of it is the same, coming together for an intensive select group of weeks with a select group of projects to grow and build better and faster together.
Jeff, you lead a community called Jump, and we're part of SC02. And so I think provide a perspective. So do you, Nicole, obviously having been a participant, but Jeff, you're actively leading a whole other DAO community that is vibrant and growing. And I wonder if you maybe can shed a little light on what participation in a C Club Accelerator maybe looked like. Yeah, what was your experience with Jump through C Club?
Yeah, so the high level that I like to start out with is going through C Club's cohort or Accelerator program is like being a part of a community while building a community. And if the whole goal is to build a tokenized community and to create and share value together, then what better way to do that than to be a part of another community with a bunch of builders and trying to learn from them, because all of these projects inherently are just at different stages. When we were in Seed Club SC02 just a year ago, we still had a wide range of project maturity. The project I was starting didn't even have a community yet. Loosely, you could say, the community was my personal network, but we hadn't sort of come together as a community yet. in a shared space. And then other communities were very far along, multiple years of working and building together, but not under the framework of Web3. So there's a bit of a common theme from the early cohorts to this fourth cohort that we've all just launched, which is there's a wide range of experience. There's a wide range of maturity within the projects. And that helps everybody grow. You're able to sort of share lessons learned, watch others at different stages. Of course, you're trying to take in a whole lot just for your own project, but one of the best ways to learn is just through examples and living sort of and participating in those examples in real time. And so having that peer group and that shared learning experience creates a lot of value.
I love the framing of like building well in other community because like there isn't clear templates here. This is, something I think we share about quite often. I use the term case studies, not templates, stage of DAOs. I think the core of the value that we get to create at C Club is just being exposed to a whole number of live case studies, both ones that have come through in the past. There's an immense amount of knowledge that you have now, given that you've been building for over a year and that you can share with our new projects. But also, of course, there's all these other case studies, and experiences and talent within each accelerator. And I think, I had this moment in SC03 where the community was answering questions better than anybody on our collaborator group, which was the folks who are there to specifically support our community of builders. And you can really start to see what I'm most excited about, which is this idea of how do we build an accelerator as a community or as a network, one that continues to create value for new projects, but then can create the incentives that bring folks like Jeff back to be deeply involved in the support, the growth of new projects and of C Club itself. Maybe that's a good place to transition to zoom out. This is Accelerator 4, which means that there were 3 before it. And I think through each of those 3, there's been some very big lessons learned. Josh, I know you, joined us for SC03 and were sort of thrown in the deep end and sort of started swimming rather expertly, rather quickly. I wonder if you can maybe highlight a few of the big differences that maybe we're seeing as we step into SC04. Like, how are we approaching this a little bit differently?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the big ones really is just, even in the 4 months since SC03 started, just the tooling and frameworks in the ecosystem have developed so much that we can almost, I think just looking forward to SC04, we can almost take some of the tooling for granted at this point. We even couldn't before. And I'm just foreseeing us being able to focus so much more on the hairy questions of building and, how do you attract a community and how do you kind of create your narrative and call to adventure. Whereas in SC03, a lot of the early days was just kind of laying out the tooling landscape and, trying to show people how to hack stuff together to accomplish some of these goals. So I think that's a big one that I'm noticing right now.
Curious your thoughts, Nicole.
Yeah, I'm sure Jeff can remember that the big question in early SC02 was just where to mint a token. So I feel like that's so true, Josh, that, this time last year, it wasn't, what are you going to do with the token and how is this going to give your community superpowers? We got to that, but it was just this scary moment of minting a token and what if you choose the wrong platform and how many? And I think that we're now a little bit flip about those questions in a way that we certainly were not a year ago. And so, I think the tech tooling and our comfort with the tech tooling has really advanced.
Jeff, since you've sort of had a front row seat to the evolution of the types of projects that have been participating in C Club, I think you probably even saw the first cohort from some level of interest. I'm curious, when you look at the projects that we're going to talk about in a high-level way shortly, what's the biggest difference you're seeing between SC04 and SC03 in terms of the types of projects and people that are applying or that are participating?
At the highest level, which I'm super excited about, is I feel like the projects are there's some diversity that has come in to the accelerator in a new way. I think that some of these projects, and that diversity comes on sort of a couple layers. The types of communities and sort of their backgrounds is one layer, but then the other is sort of this idea that community can extend and be found in a lot of different ways that maybe we're not used to. And so when we think of some of these projects are a bit more product focused and tech driven, yet there's still an inherent community that surrounds any sort of, for lack of a better word, business. or project and these great adventures and unlocking that power of community. That's kind of what we're trying to do. And so it's really, what are the differences? I'd say the difference is just the range, right? And that also is coming in from, I think that speaks to the numbers. So some of the earlier cohorts were, I think 8 to 10 projects in a cohort, to 15 in the next one, to now 20. The Seed Club brand has certainly grown substantially since then, but just because the brand has grown, I don't know that that's direct correlation to the number of projects that come in. The reason the number of projects is greater is, one, the quality of those projects and the ideas that are coming through. So very early on, it was hard to wrap your head around, well, what does it even mean to launch a social token? And so we had some very early ideas in those earlier sort of cohorts. And as the general idea of tokenized communities and building around community has permeated itself sort of through the Web3 ecosystem, there's just a wider range of ideas and more opportunities that are sort of coming in.
I do think, too, we're seeing projects come in at probably like a slightly later stage than we were in SC02 and SC03. Like, the majority of the projects that are coming into SC04 have some semblance of a community, and they've been working on bringing people together and finding that core and figuring out who they are, and are kind of coming into Seed Club now with kind of the hairier questions than, maybe before, where it's kind of just like, how do I start? And now it's more like, how do I grow, or what do I do next? Or how should I think about building a sustainable DAO, whatever that means at this stage we're at.
I think Kristen Stone, who's over at Balancer, had a wonderful tweet the other day that was like, Web 2, you start with community, or you start with product, and Web 3, you start with community. I think that's like the simple way to sort of highlight how we approach things differently. Like, the starting point is community rather than the starting point just being technology. When you start with new starting points, you end up in different places. And I think you're seeing that in the types of projects that are, interesting to our community and that we get to work with. At the same time, I think that the way I would categorize this batch is that difference is actually getting a lot smaller. That even if you're wanting to go build technology first, you most likely will need to get to some level of community, especially if it's consumer, or especially if you need to even B2B. Like, how do you scale in the modern landscape? It's, well, you need community. And I think what we're seeing in Web3 is just recognizing that community is such an essential role. And so many builders, whether they're building DAO tools or they're building NFT marketplaces or new utilities with NFTs, it's just an obvious thing for these founders to start with community as the substrata they get to initially play in. And so it just means that those differences between, like, I think we'll have a DeFi protocol in a batch in the future that's probably social in some, more social than most, but it's just recognizing that starting as a DAO and building with community embedded at the core from day one is just going to be a better way to build their business. I think that's fascinating. So maybe the process that we've run this time is something that I think is worth highlighting, because one of the core things that Seed Club as a DAO, with a number of token holders who are ultimately our governors and decision makers, are played a unique role, I think, choosing and the decision makings we had to make here. Nicole, I'm wondering if you can sort of just give us the high level about how we approach that, and maybe some of the steps we went through to actually get to the 21 out of 210 plus projects.
Yeah, sure thing. So in making this happen, I had to draw both on my sort of inner love for order and spreadsheets, and at the same time, my discomfort, or my comfort rather, with some mess and imperfection, because I think it was kind of this both and of, it's probably worth noting that as the selection process was happening, we were also in the process of putting our token out into the community in a more broad way. And so the DAO was, as we were selecting these projects, the DAO was also, the Seed Club DAO was in the process of putting its token in the hands of more community members and starting to open up how we functioned. And so with those two pieces going hand in hand, we wanted to be really thoughtful in how we involved this new community in the decision making, while also understanding that there was a really core group of us that had spent a lot of time going through each of these 210 plus applications in a lot of ways. So in order to balance that, the first stage and the first pass was a rubric, and there was 7 criteria that we put together. These were refined from criteria within the last selection process. Some of these included having a clear call to adventure, which we've talked about, I'm sure, in other episodes here, of what is the big goal that you're going toward? Why are you going there? And why should people be excited to go along with you? How, much communication and leadership savvy is there on the team? What does that team look like? And then also within the actual concept, how native is it to Web3? Is this a sort of skeuomorphic port over from Web2? Is this something that we haven't seen before? And so we took all of these criteria into consideration. We put together a rubric, and this was put out to over 60 reviewers that were alumni, core team, and contributor members, as well as collaborators. So people who've been trusted members of the C Club ecosystem. Most projects were scored twice. Some were scored a third time for a third review. And that allowed just a first pass of, okay, who's going to be the best fit for Seed Club? And then from there was a couple of additional passes where we had one-on-one interviews with projects to better get to know them. We dug more deeply into the communities, into the application materials, until we got to a group of 35 projects that we were ready to put forward. And so in late December, early January, the token became available in the community, and there was all of a sudden a greater number of token holders. And one of the first things that those token holders were able to do was, of the 35, select 10 projects through Mirror's race function. Using their tokens, they could go through and make those selections. And so the first 10 of the 21 were selected by our community members. And that was, again, it was balanced by then us going through, as the people who have been the deepest in these applications, going through those remaining 25 and selecting 11 more projects. And I can say that that was not an easy process. However, I think, again, what we looked at was the leadership team, the stage of the project, and I think importantly, is this a good fit for Seed Club as well? Can we make an impact? Because there were some great projects that maybe weren't a great fit for Seed Club. So yeah, it was a work in progress. And I think that we're looking really thoughtfully at how we break down some of that information asymmetry, how we keep our community involved in a really impactful way. I have to say, I really appreciate all of these team members because we came out of that process with, I think, some really important learnings.
When I think about Seed Club, and I visualize it, there's like all these question marks. There's like big question marks that exist. Like, how do you reward people long term? Like, there are lots of question marks. One of the big question marks is like, how do we collectively make great decisions? And one of the most important decisions we make on a regular basis is who we work with, who our community welcomes into our community. And one of our great strengths is taking action in uncertainty and being able to sort of step into the best solution at the moment and learn, and in those learnings have the opportunity to sort of lean in and build better tools or help bring better tools to market that will allow us to get better in the future. I'm excited that we have sort of an open design landscape for this question, right? Which is like, we may not do it the exact same way we've done it in the past. And I think that's important as the space evolves and as we continue to learn, because there's downsides to token weighted voting. There's no shortage of critiques of governance that are very fair. And this is is a popularity contest the best way to win? Was this a popularity contest? Like, I don't know what the answer to that was. I can say I'm extremely excited by the projects that ultimately were chosen. And I think the big lesson for me there is like, heck yes, our community is very engaged and thoughtful and a great curator of projects from our limited involvement so far. Josh, I know you've been deeply involved in helping to sort of schedule out the work that people or speakers, the guests, the content that we're going to dive into over the next little while, without getting into the nitty gritty details and names and stuff like that, but maybe just at a high level, giving people an understanding of like, what are the types of things that we're tackling over the next 8 weeks? Can you maybe, give us the overview?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess like at the highest level, like really we want projects to come in and get as unblocked across the board as possible to really be able to like leave the accelerator with an insane amount of momentum to go just continue doing amazing things and attracting contributors and getting investment and doing whatever they need to do. So really, we have kind of like each week is focused on a fundamental topic around doing that. So the first week, which we're just kicking off right now, is very much just about grounding, talking to alumni about how they got the most out of the accelerator, talking, with FWB, for example, just about kind of what it took to go from 0 to 1 for them. And then we kind of just walk through some of these fundamental topics like tokens, designing tokens, look at specific case studies, bring in experts from, legal, from token design, look at different Web3 business models. And then we spend a long time talking about all aspects of community. So community strategy to community building to very tactically like how to set up a Discord. And then, of course, spend a lot of time on governance. And then, I think our last couple of weeks we really try to like step out and expand people's brains to get them really thinking about what's possible, what's the future of this space, what's the future of your DAO, what are different business models and sustainability opportunities you can think about.
Yeah, I think like this mix between like two sessions that are meant to expand and kind of deal with high level and more listening and engaging and talking to people who've sort of been there before, mixed with the very practical and strategic and tactical stuff that we do on the more workshops and Monday, Friday sessions that kind of frame the week, I think it's a model that's been working well, and I think we're excited to see how it rolls out this time with a bit of a larger group. And I think ultimately like a much more clear understanding of what projects need today. And I think your framing of just trying to get people unblocked across the board is really the best way to sort of frame the intention here. Jeff, one of the things that I'm really excited about as C Club continues to sort of expand and open up and bring in more people as members is that so many people, there's such an excitement about being a part of something in an early stage. And by being a member at C Club, you get to lean in and be supportive of so many different communities that have either come through in the past or that exist, because there's sort of like this underlying incentive layer that drives it at one level, and then also the excitement of learning and being able to get tactical and hands-on with projects at the other level. So I often get the question like, how can I get involved? How can I support? And I think it's a question I think that you're in a good place to answer. As somebody who is leading a project through one of these cohorts, is there a way that you would have wanted the broader C Club community should have existed in its current state to follow along or be a part of Jump? Or how should people think about maybe some of the opportunities to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, getting involved and sort of entering the ecosystem, if you will, is sort of just critical, to the success of C Club, but also to the success of the projects, down to the success of the individuals that participate in those. And so there's this nice feedback loop between that hierarchy of C Club to the projects to all of the individuals. And when I think about participation on all three of those levels, so that's an interesting framework. Can you participate in Seed Club? Can you participate in the projects? And then there's this individual kind of your own sort of story as an individual within this sort of broader ecosystem. So I like to sort of point people in the direction of just at a high level, which of these projects would you just want to hang out with and sort of like have a meal with and just be friends with? And kind of start there. I encourage everybody who's sort of floating around the Seed Club ecosystem. One of the best ways to get involved with Seed Club is to get involved with the projects and sort of using that filter of which project would you want to go have a meal with, and then sort of just make your decision that way and go start hanging out and just sort of being present. One of the nice things about and I think it's a cultural shift when we've gotten involved with, let's just say, companies in the past. It's very formal. You go through a job application and you interview and you do all of these very formal structures. And getting involved with a project in the Web3 ecosystem, especially at these early stages, is it's more like kind of using the dinner analogy. No, you just go sit down, you start talking to people, you hang out in the Discord, you check out the vibes, you meet some people, maybe you send some private DMs to sort of have some just one-on-one sessions with other members or maybe the leaders themselves. But yeah, that getting involved with these projects at these early stages is a great opportunity for the projects, but also just anybody that might be listening to this episode, because all of these projects are in desperate need of really smart, passionate people that want to participate in their call to adventure and want to learn and grow, and learning and growing in significant ways is, it's fun, but it takes a lot of work. And so you want to just be very thoughtful about how you go about that. But yeah, I mean, the first step towards participation is kind of using that high level filter and then hopping into these Discords and just, sometimes you might have to wait a few months. The projects take a little bit of time to develop. There might not be an opportunity to jump in and start contributing the moment you've sort of identified the project that you like or think is cool and awesome in all the ways that you want to participate. So there's sometimes a little bit of patience to that participation and just kind of keeping an eye on things. But when the timing is right, you'll know. And then you want to go pretty fast in terms of getting involved.
Yeah, Jeff, I would just add too that I think the more explicit people can be on the ways that they can help and like upfront about that, the easier it is from like the position of someone within the DAO who's looking for assistance. Like it's very hard if someone's just showing up in Discord and saying, I want to get involved. There's a lot of work there to figure out how to get that person involved. Whereas if they come in and say, this is my background, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I'm offering, it makes it much easier. And I think like the same skill sets and roles that existed in Web 2 are needed in Web 3, but they've just kind of been unbundled and appear in different forms. So the more like fundamental you can be about how you want to plug in, and not like, I come from a product management background, like no one's asking for product managers, but they're asking for people who can scope projects. They're asking for people who can think about, business or DAO strategy. They're asking for people who can write.
Yeah. So to kind of like expand on that example from what I've experienced in Jump, our highest level contributors in Jump, people who have gotten involved, they've done exactly what you just said, which is they're here, they raise their hand, they say, I can do this, or they just start doing it. Like they just start being a product manager. They just start making creative stuff. And that may not be always the right case for every project, but you're totally right. That proactive nature and being clear on what value you can add, speaking about it, and then also just doing it has worked a lot better than the questions, for example, that I've gotten when people just say, how can I help? And I'm like, there's 1,000 things that I need. I don't know which one you're best equipped to do.
Yeah, such an interesting challenge. It's probably my biggest frustration is just seeing talented people come through our world and not knowing where to put them or how to like facilitate that connection. I think it's something that we talk about a lot within C Club. Like, how do we make that? And I think we're making good progress on it. But there's some just incredible talent that's rolling through these communities, and there's like a moment to be able to be like, yes, come and be a part of this. But for right now, at least, that sort of self-responsibility is the key differentiator. Mm-hmm. Nicole, I know there's going to be a lot of people listening to this episode. They're probably listening right now. They're like, why don't you just tell us who these projects are? And maybe I should just burst some bubble. We're not going to tell you who the projects are right now. It's on our Twitter account, twitter.com/CClubHQ. You'll see a whole list. Peace Note made some beautiful graphics about it. There's just too many to go through in any meaningful detail. And so I just encourage you to go and visit the Twitter or hop into our Discord to view the announcement there. I'm assuming once people go do that, they're going to go, oh my gosh, these are amazing projects. How do I follow along? So like, what is the best way for people to feel a sense of connection and participation, or at least stay up to date with what's happening in this cohort?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a couple different ways. I think the short answer is definitely Discord and Twitter. We're going to be doing a town hall on the 11th, which is today's Monday, so this Friday. And we'll also be continuing to have some little digests come out each week. So if you are in our Discord and you're seeing the announcements, stay tuned to those, because I think that that's going to be a little bit like a serial where you can see just, each week a little learning or a little highlight, a little glimpse into the Accelerator. And, there's a couple other, I think, in my mind, sort of flying under the radar elements within our Discord that I encourage both current projects and also members in our community to use. So there's an SCOX public channel that's just kind of an open window between the Accelerator and the general public. And there was a little bit of interesting discourse there when the token race selection was happening. But I think it's a fun way for projects that are currently building to maybe put those flares up and basically say, hey, we're looking for somebody to do some emojis or stickers within our Discord, or we're looking for somebody to come in and do a Discord reorg, or, some of those smaller needs, but also just to kind of share little wins and highlights out from the Accelerator. And likewise, if you have questions for the Accelerator, that's a great place to go in there and have a direct line. So I would say definitely our server, but I think that I'm going to put us on the line and make us accountable to also bring these learnings into some of our live events, whether it's town halls and Twitter spaces. So be on the lookout there too.
It's a great opportunity to plug our new Thursday live shows called Clubhouse.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, the team there is doing an amazing job at sort of ultimately bringing people and discussions that are happening on this podcast and through all the other channels and media that we're putting out, sort of creating a place for people to come together live and share. And I think just hearing what you're saying there, Nicole, probably makes a lot of sense for us to actually start to bring in some of the lessons and latest happenings within the Accelerator into that live space as well. So I think that could be a kind of a cool way to evolve that. Wonderful attendance in our first episode last Thursday. It's, I believe, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, Thursday afternoons. So make sure you're following C Club HQ to get the announcements there. All of this sort of works towards a really exciting thing. We call it Demo Day. Maybe not the most original name for this. And in fact, I think maybe the fact that we called it Demo Day, maybe for the first time at the end of SC03, we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people show up live in a Discord to listen to the latest announcements, the pitches, if you will, that were very much not pitches from our SC03 teams. I think the idea of Demo Day got people thinking that they're going to get pitched to as VCs. That was very much not the vibe. It felt like people were probably dancing along to this one in some way. But Josh, can you just maybe highlight what we should expect from Demo Day, or maybe just put that on people's radars?
Yeah, definitely. It's just a really good experience, a really good opportunity to get, an overview of every project's been working on, what their vision is, the progress they've made over the last couple months in the Accelerator, and really find opportunities to get involved as well. Like every project comes out of our Accelerator needing different things. Some call out for collaborators and specific people they need to come in to achieve their vision. Some are looking for investment. Some just launched a crowdfund, which is a cool opportunity to join their DAOs. So really good opportunity to just get kind of an overall view on some of the coolest up and coming projects in community DAOs and tokenized communities, as well as opportunities to get involved and really plug in and get your hands dirty into the ecosystem.
There's a DJ. I mean, not only is there a DJ, there's also Vibe Squad making an appearance in the channel. So it feels like maybe that's another type of DJing. It's just the gifts that get dropped in there. It feels like it is. Nicole, I want to sort of wrap us up here a little bit, as I think, there's, people are probably itching to jump in and go see the projects that we're working with here. Today, we welcomed our 21 projects through sort of an introduction session. Just sort of want to give you the floor here to close out. What are you excited about? What are you looking forward to? What are your hopes and dreams as we move through this next 8 weeks?
Yeah, so I have done this type of thing. I've held this type of space for a lot of ages and a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life, from age 16 to 66, from literally almost all continents. And there's something that's really magical just about bringing that first day or that first week in the room and feeling the energy and knowing that you don't know each other yet, you're not friends yet, you're not supporters and backers and members of each other's communities yet, but knowing that this journey is about to happen, and at the end, how tight those bonds are going to be. And I think that also knowing that this is now happening over the digital sphere and yet is still just as effective, I think is a really exciting piece, because while I've done that many times over, I've always done it in physical space, flying people in from all of the continents. And so having gone through this now twice, once as a participant, once as a facilitator, and now doing this again, knowing that we can still create those really authentic bonds digitally in these communities, these learning and supportive bonds. And then on top of that, that there's going to be all of these threads of ownership in each other's communities, I think is just sort of this exciting moment to be standing on this precipice, knowing what's coming and knowing the great value that many of these communities and projects are going to then be putting out into the world, and that we get to be flies on the wall supporting them. It's such a gift and a privilege.
I forgot how energizing it was. Woke up this morning, I was like, oh my God, we're going through this again. And then we had our call, and I was so amped afterwards. I was like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, it's
100% agree. I walked out and I was like, yes.
I was like, I'm dropping all of my other Seed Club responsibilities to focus on.
Don't do that, Josh. We need you. This is Nicole's influence here.
I was excited.
Yeah, fair. Now there is yeah, it's just like this feeling of optimism and excitement and creativity. And again, I just think about like, these are seeds that are planted that are going to grow and grow and grow. And I guess the forest, I don't know. What's the analogies I should be using? I should not do analogies on Monday. I'm struggling with them all the time, but I think just the more excited people that we have that come through C Club, the more excited people we have in our community who get to support the next group of excited people that come into C Club. And that just starts getting exponentially awesomer, more awesomer, greater, gooder.
Whew.
Why do I talk on Mondays? What even is this? All right, folks. Well, let's leave it there. I guess a few things to put on people's radars. One, C Club HQ on Twitter. Go have a look. These projects are amazing. Hop into our Discord. It's on our Twitter as well. It's C Club's the URL slug. Shout out to Jump Community and Jeff for your ongoing support and help here. If you're in the marketing or advertising world and you're not part of Jump, what are you even doing? Go get in there. I hear the applications are just super long right now and they're working through them. So make sure you go get in there before you're too late. I don't know. That was the most marketing thing I've ever said in a long time. Get in there before it's too late. This deal won't last. 99 cents now only. And then C Club's going to be in East Denver in, I guess, a week and a bit. Next week. So Josh, John, and myself will be down there. If you're going to be in and around East Denver, please reach out, or I think we have a thing or two planned, but TBD. Pleasure speaking with you all today, sharing the excitement, just getting started here with SC04. Just getting started here with C Club in general. And it's a privilege to get to build with you all. And Nicole, you've done a phenomenal job at leading this and just leveling up this accelerator to levels that really couldn't even have grokked mere 6 months ago. So thank you for your continued excellence here. We're very lucky to have you in the C Club world.
Thank you. Thank you, team.